Temptations are one of the most misunderstood forces in the human experience. On the surface, they feel powerful, exciting, and irresistible, yet beneath that temporary intensity they often drain energy, cloud judgment, and pull a person away from their highest potential. When you begin to look at it through the lens of manifestation and the law of attraction, you start to realize that temptations are not just random impulses, but energetic states. They are patterns of thought and emotion that, when repeated, begin to shape your reality in subtle but profound ways. Whatever you consistently think about, feel, and focus on becomes the frequency you live in, and that frequency determines what you attract into your life. If your mind is constantly consumed by temptations, instant gratification, and short-term pleasure, you are training your brain and your energy to operate on a lower level of awareness. This level is driven by impulse rather than intention, reaction rather than creation. This is where the real danger lies, not in the feeling itself, but in the loss of control over your own mind. Because the moment you lose control over your focus, you lose control over your direction. Manifestation requires direction. It requires clarity. It requires discipline. It requires the ability to hold a vision and align your thoughts and actions with that vision over time. Temptations interrupt that process. They fragment your attention. They weaken your willpower. They condition you to chase quick dopamine hits instead of long-term fulfillment. When that becomes a habit, it starts to define your identity. Identity is nothing more than repeated patterns of thought and behavior. So if you repeatedly give in to temptations, you begin to see yourself as someone who lacks control, someone who follows urges rather than leads them. That self-concept becomes the blueprint for your reality. Because you don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. If you are in a constant state of craving, of needing, of seeking external stimulation, you will continue to attract situations that reinforce that state. Situations that keep you distracted, unfocused, and disconnected from your deeper purpose. This is why so many people feel stuck, not because they lack potential, but because their energy is scattered, their focus is divided, and their mind is conditioned to chase rather than create. Manifestation cannot thrive in that environment. Manifestation requires coherence. It requires a unified direction of thought and emotion. It requires you to become the version of yourself who already embodies discipline, clarity, and purpose. That means learning to master your impulses rather than being mastered by them. Every time you resist an urge that does not serve your higher self, you strengthen your ability to choose consciously. You strengthen your mental discipline. You raise your baseline level of awareness. That shift alone begins to change what you attract. Because now you are no longer operating from a place of lack or craving. You are operating from a place of control and intention. This is a completely different frequency. A frequency that aligns with growth, success, and fulfillment. And this is where the conversation moves beyond just avoiding temptations and into transforming energy. Because the same energy that fuels temptations can be redirected into creativity, ambition, and purpose. It is not about suppressing energy, but about channeling it. Energy itself is neutral. It becomes constructive or destructive based on how you use it. When you learn to take that intense desire and redirect it toward your goals, toward building your future, toward becoming the best version of yourself, you begin to unlock a level of drive and focus that most people never experience. This is where manifestation becomes powerful. Your thoughts are no longer scattered. Your emotions are no longer diluted. Your energy is no longer leaking in multiple directions. It becomes focused. It becomes intentional. It becomes aligned. And when your entire being moves in one direction, results become inevitable. Not overnight, not instantly, but inevitably. Because consistency in thought and action creates momentum, and momentum creates outcomes. This is something that people often overlook when they talk about the law of attraction. They think it is just about thinking positive thoughts. But it is much deeper than that. It is about becoming a certain type of person. A person who has control over their mind. A person who chooses their focus deliberately. A person who aligns their daily habits with their long-term vision. That kind of person naturally attracts different results. Not because of luck, but because of alignment. When you remove or reduce the influence of temptations in your life, you create space for that alignment to take place. You create space for clarity. You create space for purpose. You create space for growth. Over time, that space becomes your new normal. Your mind becomes quieter. Your focus becomes sharper. Your decisions become more intentional. And you start to notice changes, small at first, but significant. Increased confidence, improved discipline, a stronger sense of direction. These internal changes eventually reflect externally, because your outer world is a reflection of your inner state. When your inner state shifts, your reality follows. The real message is not that temptations are evil or that desire is wrong. The real message is that unconscious desire can control you if you do not become aware of it. Awareness is the first step toward change. Because once you become aware of a pattern, you gain the ability to interrupt it, to question it, and to choose differently. Every time you choose differently, you reinforce a new pattern. A pattern of control. A pattern of discipline. A pattern of intentional living. Over time, that pattern becomes your identity. And your identity becomes your destiny. Your life is nothing more than the accumulation of your repeated choices, your repeated thoughts, your repeated behaviors. When those align with your highest goals, your highest values, your highest vision, you begin to experience a different reality. A reality that is not driven by impulse, but by purpose. Not by distraction, but by direction. This is where true manifestation begins. Not in wishing for a better life, but in becoming the person who naturally creates one. This requires sacrifice. It requires discipline. It requires the willingness to let go of short-term pleasure for long-term fulfillment. But in that sacrifice, there is power, because you are no longer a slave to your impulses. You are the creator of your experience. Once you step into that role, everything changes. Your focus changes. Your energy changes. Your results change. You begin to realize that the real battle was never external. It was always internal. It was always about mastering your own mind, your own habits, your own patterns. And when you win that battle, you don't just eliminate something that was holding you back. You unlock a version of yourself that was always there. A version of you that is focused, disciplined, intentional, and powerful. A version of you that is not easily distracted. A version of you that is committed to growth and aligned with purpose. That version of you is the one who manifests a different life.